Hey everybody, Rachel here from Rachthestamper.com. I was working on a project and I thought I might as well just film this. So I got like a teeny bit of the way into it, but I'm going to show you what I did. Basically, it's a really cool idea I thought of the other day when I finished stamping with, what were we making? Something we made yesterday. And I thought I had something out and I thought it would be really cool. But I'm adding this, leave a little sparkle, because y'all know I love unicorns. So I'm going to flip you down and show you what we're doing. Okay, apologize for anyone if I made you a little motion sick there, but basically what I thought would be fun is if we heat embossed an entire sheet with the black sparkle embossing paper. So I'm going to show you how to do this. It's pretty quick, and you really, I know it probably looks like you use a lot of paper, but you shouldn't. Or not a lot of paper, a lot of embossing powder, but I promise you I dumped mine out and I thought, wow, that's a lot, and then the whole thing was almost full again. In the meantime, what I did do was I went ahead and I stamped the unicorn. And this is in a Copic or alcohol marker friendly ink. Okay, so that's the unicorn. So I did do this with my Stamparatus because I really wanted to make sure that I got it nice and dark. And the other cool thing about it is if for some reason I wanted to do it again after I colored the image in with markers, I could just restamp it again. So that's another really good idea. But I'm going to show you how I did this paper. And basically what I did was, and I'm just going to do it on a small piece. And the worst case scenario, I can always add this to something if I wanted. But you're going to take your Versamark ink pad, and you do want to make sure that it's nice and juicy. That's one thing you want to make sure. You want to kind of move your pad around a couple different directions. That way you have plenty of ink on there. If for any reason there's a doubt of whether or not you have enough ink, I would definitely re-ink it. But again, moving your stamp pad around in different positions when you ink it also helps to make sure that it's fully covered. I'm going to go ahead and crank on my heat gun, and I'm going to grab my coffee filter and my black sparkle Stampin' Emboss powder. Okay, so again, when I did this whole sheet and I dumped it out on here, it looked like I went through a lot of it, but the entire jar almost is filled up to that first line, so it really doesn't go through that much. So I'm going to sprinkle the powder on and just give it a good tap to get off the excess. Now the cool part about this, if for some reason you miss a little spot, if you keep your powder out while it's still warm, you could re-dip it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this with the heat tool. I just finished embossing the other one, or heating it, and you can see as it heats there, it starts to turn shiny. And it does heat pretty quickly if you preheat your tool. So I'm just gonna heat that, make sure I got all of this here. So we could always cut this out and use it for an accent piece. But right now, because it is heated, it is really, really hot. So if there's one spot you missed, all you have to do is just pick up your powder and you can just dump back on top again. Again, do make sure you tap it back off and then just reheat to set it. This is a great way to get multiple layers of embossing powder without having to go through re-inking it with a Versamark by just dipping it again when it's hot. And you'll see when you're finished. Now it is still warm, so be careful, because if you get this on your fingers, it burns and it is not fun. But it's a really cool accent piece. So it's like sparkly iridescent. So basically, I kind of thought this would almost look like a galaxy. So this might also be really neat for like a nighttime card. So then, as you can see, it looks like, oh my goodness, I went through all that stuff. However, when you put this back, and I really like the coffee filters for this. And as a matter of fact, I saw someone use the little hot dog holders. They're little paper. They're a little bit smaller than this. Those are a great idea as well, because it's really easy to clean up your powder with. And then if you see, the whole thing is almost completely full again. So it is really full. So then what I thought we would do is I brought in the unicorn. And again, I did already go ahead and stamp it with a alcohol-friendly marker. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a couple colors. So I'm going to go with, I think Flirty Flamingo I know is a good one. That's Flirty Flamingo, because I kind of want to do like a little rainbowish thing. I think we have Purple Posy. Let's see. Pool Party is always a good one. We'll do Pool Party. Maybe a nice soft yellow. What is this? I think this is Daffodil Delight. Oh, I have Daffodil and So Saffron. Let me see which one of those. We're going to have to pick one or the other. Daffodil we got. Okay, so Daffodil Delight. So Saffron would have been good as well. We'll do a nice green. So how about a little bit Granny Apple Green? So we're going to just stick with these colors. I did pick both, but I'm not really sure if we're necessarily going to use both or not. But I am going to use the bullet tip kind of so I can stay in a little bit closer. And I'm basically just going to kind of fill in a rainbow portion-ish. And this is going to be more like a pastel kind of rainbow, like a girly girl's rainbow, which is the kind of rainbow I would paint. And that was light. I'm actually going to move to the dark if I was painting rainbows back in the 80s. Because that is when unicorns first made their appearance into my life anyway. I do love unicorns. And then I'm going to pick to start the, actually the dark purple posy because that is a pretty light color as well. And then I'm just going to kind of follow this in, not really in any specific pattern, but kind of just to leave a little purple and pink together. Probably the longest portion of this will be is I'm going to fussy cut this. We have Dark Pool Party. Ooh. Well, in case that's ever happened to you, just a quick tip. This has happened before where, and this is a much, much older marker. If you ever get it where the tip starts to come loose, so a little bit of a learning point there, it kind of is towards the end of your marker. So I do have another purple or Pool Party Dark, which that's the same. You can tell the difference because they changed some of the writing. I believe this is one of the newer markers and this is one of the older markers. So sometimes you will get the point where the tip actually does. Ooh, can I get this one open? Oh, this one did it too. I must have gotten rid of that one the first time and didn't realize it. So when it gets to that point, a lot of times it's because the alcohol is kind of dried up on the inside anyway and it doesn't tend to come out as well. I noticed that tends to be the trend. So if that ever happens to you, it's probably, unfortunately, maybe just time for you to invest in a new color of the one. Because I will tell you, out of personal experience, Pool Party is probably one of my most frequently used colors. Because I like to use it a lot as a light blue and a green variation. So most likely that's probably why. Then I'm going to move on to light Granny Apple Green. And I'm going to stick with light for this because this color is a very overpowering color if you pick it as a dark. And also, if you want to, you could omit the Granny Apple Green if you want to keep this soft. But I think it kind of goes really nicely with that pastel. And I'm going to go with the lighter of the Daffodil Delight. Same thing. Just bringing in a little bit here and there. And then I might go back in and fill in a little bit here at the bottom with the pink. And I'm also going to do the horn with the Daffodil Delight. Again, that was the light Daffodil Delight. Most everything else I did with the dark. I'm going to go back in with the dark Flirty Flamingo and just finish out the rest of the tail here. I'm not really sticking 100% close to the edges. There are probably a few spots where things are sticking up and they really don't necessarily need to, but that's kind of just the way I go with these for coloring. So speaking of, this is the light Pool Party. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the brush tip for this, and this, as you can see, is one of the older ones. So it kind of just depends on probably which one you use more. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add a little bit of color kind of to the shading spots here. And what it does is it kind of almost makes the unicorn seem a little bit more white. And it has that little bit of blue in there. You could also do this if you wanted to with a really, really light gray. So maybe smoky slate. Gray granite is a little bit unusual of a color, so I really wouldn't do it with smoky slate. And I'm going to just kind of trace the back, the mane and the back of the horse. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with the dark Pool Party and just do the just kind of color in the hooves. Because you know, unicorns are magical creatures. They don't have regular color hooves like the rest of the horses. But I think this looks really cute. So since I kept this exactly where it is, just to kind of again, accent on the black of it, I'm just going to re-ink it one more time. And just will kind of re-highlight all the black on there. Okay, that looks really, really good. So it really makes it stand out. So at this point, if you didn't want to, this could be also an image that if you decided you didn't want to color it in, you could leave it as is. But I'm going to go ahead and bring this part in. Let me move these out of the way. Make sure I chuck those since those are a little bit past their prime. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to back it onto a purple. And I'm going to go with Highland Heather because I really, really like this color. I'm trying to see. I thought I had a base. I have a base already. I believe I do need to score it, though. So let me just move this. So 4 1/4. And this should already be cut to 5 1/2. All right, perfect. This I want to make sure is cut down a little bit. Yep, so that's 4 by 5 1/4. And then what I'm going to do, so I am going to, because this is a little bit curly just because of it being embossed, so that is normal. I'm actually going to put this down with 2 different things. I'm going to put some fast fuse on the back of this just to make sure that I get a really good adhesion. And then I'm also going to put it down with liquid glue just to make sure that it sticks really, really well. So kind of getting the best of both worlds, because the liquid glue is going to also let you be able to wiggle it around a little bit if it's not exactly where you wanted it. I usually put this right on the strips and kind of just a little bit in the middle. So I'm going to take and set this onto my card base. Looks pretty good. Okay, and I'm just pressing this down. Oh, that's my other piece. You could always put that even on the inside if we wanted to. I'm just going to press this down. Now, if you get any curling with it, the other thing you could do with this is you could run it through your die cutting machine just in between a piece of folded cardstock. So you could take, for example, if this is a clean piece, run it through and it'll make sure it's nice and flat. So that's another, just a little tip for you there. Okay, so I have my unicorn, so this might take a second, so I do appreciate you bearing with me. I would normally say I would fast forward this, except I don't edit my videos. I can save that part for the sentiment, and probably require me another extra week for me to post this video. So I'm just going to go through and trim this about as close as I can. Again, if you have some sort of a device that you could cut this with, you could absolutely use that. But I tend to hold the scissors still if you are new to fussy cutting. And I just move the paper kind of around where I want to cut. Kind of like a person would do if they were mitering wood. And now that I think about that, I probably watched my grandfather do that an awful lot. But you move, the blade stays still. And then you kind of move the wood around. So we'll just take the same concept with our paper. And you don't have to get too close in, so I'm not going to get terrifically close for parts of this. Probably get a little bit closer here at the horn. One other thing you could do is you could take a really light gray marker, and I'm going to show you one other thing I'm going to do for this after the fact. You could take a light gray marker and trace the outside, so it will really give it a very 3D quality. So just kind of keep that in mind. So with these little pokey pieces of hair, the other thing you can do if you want, as you're going around after the fact, is you can go in with the little edge of your snips and kind of just nip in little pieces. And I'll show you what I mean in a second. There you go. That didn't take terrifically long at all. Okay, so now we have a unicorn. So if you wanted to, with these little pieces here, what you could do is you could kind of go in a little bit and then just nip with the edge. If you wanted to make sure that you got some extra little spiky hair pieces. But again, this is just something that's totally optional, but there we go. So I'm going to leave it like that. That looks pretty good. Now, one other thing I am going to do, just since I have it out, is I'm going to take my brush tip end of my pool party and I'm just going to kind of outline it. So as I said, you could do this with the smoky slate. You could do this with pool party, but it kind of just gives a little bit of, especially up against that black, it'll give an edge of definition. I'm trying not to get, I don't really want to get it on the horn, but just to kind of outline that piece. That's pretty good. Okay, so it really makes it like 3D, and I think it's kind of looks like something out of a, I don't know, science fiction movie maybe, or something like that. But I am going to put this down. So same thing I'm going to do again is I'm going to put just a little strip of Fast Fuse across the bigger parts. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my liquid glue. And I'm just going to put some, and I'll kind of spread this around with my finger. Specifically, I want to make sure I get the horn. That way it stays down. Okay. All right, now I'm just going to take my finger and kind of just spread this. That way I don't get any gushy pieces that squish out. And make sure that I pretty much cover all the edges that I want to. And then I'm just going to take this unicorn. I'm going to kind of put, I don't know why I think unicorns are always male, but I'm going to put him front and center. Male with that beautiful mane. Okay, and then last thing we're going to do is we're going to do a sentiment. And I'm going to do Make Your Dreams Come True because this is a very dreamy looking scene to me. So, make your dreams come true. And how about we'll do that just on a little scrap of paper. So what we'll do is we'll stamp this and then kind of trim it out. And the only thing that's the hardest part is figuring what color would you want to do. We could do purple. We'll do purple. Let's just stick with it. Instead of Highland Heather, though, I'm going to go with Gorgeous Grape just to make it a little bit darker. Looks pretty good. And I'm going to keep it. I'm going to put it on an end. And you could punch this with a punch. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give this just a second to dry. And I'm going to keep these ends kind of square, and then I'll make this part down here a little bit swirly. So I'm just going to follow the edge here. Since this is a pretty straight sentiment. Same thing here. I'm going to trim this part out so it's a little bit easier. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing where I kind of trim this part down. Okay, and then we'll kind of go fancy. So this part here, I'm going to go down here. Follow this up. Kind of the same like we did with the unicorn. So it's kind of like a little bit of straight and a little bit of fancy. Okay, one other thing I'll do, and I'm just going to change colors for this. I'm going to go with the, I think this is Light Flirty Flamingo, and just trace around the outside. Sorry, don't mind my finger. I have some, apparently some glue and paper that just got taped to it. And we'll go like that. And this part I am going to pop up on dimensionals. And since we are on a darker base, well, apparently I ran out of the large black dimensional. So I'm going to use these little pieces here. Actually, this will work out really well, I think. Go to about here. Put this on. That looks pretty good. And just because this is embossed, I'm going to put a little bit of liquid glue just to make sure that it sticks. So, a little bit of liquid glue like that. Again, I'm going to just kind of spread it with my finger so it gets on the whole thing. And then add that right there. And that kind of gives you the, so you can see, you can maneuver it a little bit, which is nice. It gives you the maneuverability in case you wanted to adjust it. But I think that looks really cool. One last thing I want to add. Hopefully this has something in it. Let's see. Let me just do a little test. Yeah. Is I'm going to add, of course, some Wink of Stella, specifically to the hair. Because you know you need some sparkle on that rainbow hair. A little bit on the horn. And then just a little kind of over, oops, make sure that's still in the same spot. Just a little over the body. And then just a little bit right here. And Wink of Stella, so as you can tell, this is regular dye ink here. It will make your ink bleed just a little bit, but I'm kind of okay with that because I wanted to be this a little bit dreamy looking. So this little purple swirl, it's got some sparkle to it, but that's fine. So just keep that in mind. This is kind of like using a blender pen. So with going to the purple, and then if you go back to these regular colors, you want to make sure that you wipe off your brush. Otherwise, you will end up with slight purple sparkle all over your unicorn as well. So, pretty fun card. I think a very fun card. Pretty easy technique is what I was saying, but lots of sparkle. So you could also have used the leave a little sparkle wherever you go sentiment. That is totally appropriate for this. But I think this is a really, really cool card. I like it a lot. Actually, I have some birthday parties coming up for some of my son's classmates. I bet the girls would love this card. It's super pretty, so I might have to make a couple more of these. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you'd like to get any of the stuff that I showed today, you can go to my online store, rachthestamper.stampinup.net. If you shop there and you use the current host code, which is here, but it's always on my blog as well if for some reason you can't find it. If you do shop with that host code and you spend over $50, I will send you a little gift. I have a free PDF that I send out with every order. And also, there's lots of other things. So there's multiple steps up. So if you go to rachthestamper.com, you can see my monthly specials. And if you have a really big shopping list, why not join as a demonstrator? Right now, you can get $125 worth of stuff for $99, plus a free mini trimmer, a 6x6 DSP sampler, and one stamp set of your choice that is valid through March 31st of 2020. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.